Sorry for the bright light. I kind of need the light to see, so I hope that doesn't bother anybody. I'm going to mark in my journal where I'm going to do my injection sites, just in case I have any adverse reaction that I need to go to the hospital or bring up to my doctor. And these are going to go in the upper thigh, 2 in each leg. And since I've already inspected the bottle, I'm going to peel off one of the labels. And I'm going to put it in the journal. That way, if there's ever a recall on the medication or anything down the road that comes up, I will have a record that I did take that batch of medication in case something happens. It's always good to keep track of stuff like that. And now for the hand sanitizer. The Band-Aids aren't needed right now, so those will get set off to the side. Here is the sterile drape that everything is going to go on. The transfer pin or needle, whatever you would like to call it. I was also sent gloves. I know some of you notice I'm not using them, but they sent me gloves way too small for my chunky hands, and they won't send me any new ones. So I'm just stuck dealing with hand sanitizer for the time being. And I don't need that box for right now, so that can move out of the way. The infuse set. This has caps on both ends, so I can go ahead and just sit that right on the drape. I don't need to leave that in the packaging. The needles come with 4 tegaderms to be held in place with, because they sent me paper tape as well, which I also cannot use. The needles all have caps on them, as well as the cap here, so that can also sit on the drape. The syringes do not have caps on them, so I do have to leave them in the packaging. I need to keep them as sterile as possible, since this is a human blood product and it is going inside of me. So now what I need to do, after I've already inspected the bottle, I've already peeled the label off, now I need to pop the blue cap off. Just like so. Take an alcohol wipe. Scrub the top of it really well. This blue cap, once removed, will be what hooks up to the syringe. This white cap, once removed, will be the spike that goes into the medication. Since I do not have sterile gloves, anything that has a cap on it, I cannot touch with my bare hands. Take the blue cap off, put in the garbage. With these, it's easier to have a little bit of air inside the syringe. And you twist that right onto where that blue cap was, like so. And then you slowly tip it upside down. The less bubbles, the better. Try to give you guys a side view here of what I am doing. I'm pushing the air in. And this helps fill up the syringe. I know this medication is super clear and super hard to see, but it is filling up the syringe. This is a 10-gram bottle or 100 milliliters. So I will be doing 2 syringes full. And that is 1 syringe done. And as you can see here, just from filling up the syringe, that there is already so many bubbles in there. And this is not sterile, so this has to go back into the package. Same thing here. Pull back, get some air. Oops. And there went my piggy stand. My bad, 1 second. He's not being very cooperative today. Slowly tip. Push the air in. And pull back. You want to get as much of this out of the bottle as you can, so you can wiggle that spike around to get every last drop. And there's a little bit of a hole in there. So we'll get all that to the top. There's still a little bit in there. sure you get all that foam out. The little bit of bubbles in there are fine because it is not going into a vein, so I don't have to worry about that. And next, the caps that I set off to the side go back on this to cover that spike so nobody gets poked in the garbage. And the bottle will go back in the box. Next, we undo the papers. And I am going to do the syringe with 40 in it first. Without touching the end. Hook it up to the syringe. Clamp it. And then you're going to stick it onto the end of your needles right here. At this point, you're going to clamp all 4 needle lines. They do become quite the tangled mess. All 5 clamps. These caps can go in the garbage, they're no longer in use. The easiest way my nurses and I have found to prime these lines is to do them one at a time. Just because, one, the liquid is very difficult to see going through the line, and it has to stop at a certain point called dry priming. I'm going to leave all the caps on the needles. And I'm just going to unclamp one needle line, the one I'm working on. I'm going to unclamp the main line going to the syringe. And now we prime. You have to watch very closely. Because it is very hard to see. But there is a certain spot that you need to stop at. All right. It's an air bubble right there, but right here is where I stopped at. It's called dry priming. That needle has been clamped. And she is good to go. Next needle. Same thing. Unclamp. Make sure that the line that you just primed is clamped, or you're going to have fluid come shooting out of there, and you don't want to waste this stuff. It's very expensive. It does take a lot of strength to prime these lines. Because you're taking such a large volume and pushing it into a very, very small line. Two down. Glad I only have to prime these once. Three, and last but not least, number 4. Alright. That is literally the hardest part of the whole thing. Believe it or not. Now what I have to do is I have to clean off the spots that I'm going to be injecting and also inserting the needles at the same time. Don't know how well you guys are going to be able to see this with my little piggy phone holder. Sorry, it's not cooperating. So you have to find a very, very fatty spot and wipe down a very big area. With the alcohol wipe. Again, if you are squeamish of needles, this video is not for you. And now would be your chance to look away. With these, you need to inject very quickly, almost like a bee sting. What you first need to do is there's this white protector on there. You remove that. And it's got these little butterfly wings on there. This cover is for the needle. I don't know if you can see that, but that is a very, very tiny needle. My camera won't even focus on it. It's so tiny. But that is what's going into my leg. I need to warm up the wings first because otherwise the needles try to pop out. That's the last thing we need. Alright. Needle cap off. I've got my area right here. And we inject. And I try to turn around and place it to where it's not going to be too much of my way, since these are on my legs. And then I put down the little tegaderms. So that right there is one, and not close to done. You do have to inject in a different spot each time you do an infusion. So that does make this a little bit more difficult. Since I do only have one place that I can do my infusions, I can't alternate between the legs and the belly until this ostomy is closed. So I just have to try to roughly remember where my last infusion site was and try to stay 2 inches away from it. Also, you need to try and space your needles 2 inches apart from each other, so you're not overcrowding the area with medication. And this one's going to go a little bit farther down towards the knee. Plastic cover again. And another one in. And that concludes my right leg, your left. Still keeping everything clamped for right now. Moving on to the left. Same thing, alcohol wipes. After I find a good spot. 3 down, 1 to go, guys. I also wanted to mention this is the first time I am doing this without a nurse here. They discharged me from nursing care last week, so that's a plus. And the last one is in. Now what I have to do is to check for blood return. If there is blood return in any of the lines, I have 2 options. I can either clamp the line off and just not use it at all, or I can remove that needle and attempt to stick it in a different location. I have not had any blood return in the first 2 times that we have done this, so I am hoping that we do not have any this time. And I do not see any blood return, so we are good to go. Now the final steps before starting the infusion is I have clamped the main line off going to the syringe, and now I have to put it in this crazy looking pump that you're probably like, oh my gosh, what is this? I have to put my syringe in here, and it'll only go one way, and you lock it into place. Next, you twist this all the way up. This is just a giant spring in here. This puts tension on this plunger to push the medicine in through the tubing into my legs. That's all it does. There's no electrical component. There's nothing that's going to beep and tell me when it's done. I just have to frequently keep my eyes on it to make sure it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Right now it's at the 40 mil mark. My other syringe is at the 50. So that equals or I'm sorry, it's at the 60. Yeah, it's at the 60. So that would be my 100 mils. My wonderful pump comes with a carrying case, which is a little difficult to deal with, but it makes getting around the house easier. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that in there. It only goes in one way. There's only one slot that allows the tubing to come out of. And you just Velcro it in there to keep it in place. Now before I start my infusion, I want to take my blood pressure and check my oxygen level. So I will be back with those items so I can document that.